Welcome to Locked On Marlins, guys. It is Tuesday, the 21st of February. Happy Pancake Day for everyone that celebrates that. There's going to be a lot of tossing going on here in the Pratt household today. Guys, it is rule change season. We're going to dig into all of the rule changes that are happening. We're starting to see some of it in some of the spring and workout videos as the players start to familiarize themselves with the rules. So myself, the UK GOAT, Shaun Barrett in the house to get into not only what rule changes are happening this year, but equally what impact they will have on the game, both from an offensive and a defensive and pitching standpoint. All on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This, of course, is your daily Marlins podcast. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up on Twitter at Miami Marlins_UK. If you are listening to the pod, hit subscribe. It is your team every day. Yes, there is a YouTube channel. Head over to there, hit subscribe. Also, we are trending towards 1,000 subscribers. We're trending towards 1,000 subscribers. Go and hit subscribe. Enjoy the content there. You will see the UK GOAT Shaun Barrett is in the house looking absolute flames. That is his local baseball team's cap as well. Shaun, how we doing, brother?
I'm not too bad, Pete. We're past the Super Bowl. We've got spring training games this week. We are almost there through the off-season. Baseball's almost back. Can't get any better.
Beautiful. I did. I even had to go and look at the schedule and saw highlighted there was a game coming up against the Mets this week, which is wild. It feels though, Shaun, we should probably do like a full trade extravaganza episode just for old time's sake, just like last year, and go through that. But we're not going to do that. We're going to go even more exciting than trades. We're going to talk about rules. And let's be honest, there's a ton of rules coming into the game this year. There's maybe some more brewing for future years. We'll wait to see what happens. But what I wanted to do is to actually spend some time digging into what are the changes and what we think the impact could and should be, whether they're good for the game, whether we're nervous about them, et cetera, who will be nervous about them. Some people will be. So if you love your rules, you will love this episode. Let's start with a quick rundown of what the rule changes are, and then we'll kind of dig into it, Shaun. Firstly, I think the most talked about that I've heard anyway is the limiting or banning of the shift. I think that's probably the most talked about rule change, effectively taking away that situation of, the third baseman swinging around and basically playing shallow right. So two guys either side of the shortstop, the second base bag, which I think is interesting. 3-man outfield still. You can have your outfielders where you want. That's the other thing we'll talk about as well as we go. But the shift, we have a pitch clock as well. 15-second pitch clock with no runners on, 20 seconds if there's a runner on. Bigger bases. I put this out as well the other day. Huge bases now. They are looking huge. 3 inches bigger. Boy, oh boy. 3 inches makes all the difference. Pick-off attempts are now limited as well to 2. From a pitching perspective, the runner on second also remains for extra innings and will remain for the regular season. That seems to now just be inked into baseball, the rule book now. That's just the way it's going to be. Postseason unaffected. There's also limiting as well around what the pitchers can do in terms of their pre-pitch mechanics, moving away from the jiggery-pokery and the dancing around and all that kind of rocking the baby. That is no longer allowed. That's a balk. So I fear for Richard Blyer this year. It's going to be a tough year for Blyer. Tons happening, Shaun. Like a lot of rules going on here. Overall, what's MLB trying to accomplish here with these rules?
No, to me, they're trying to do 2 things. They're trying to make the game more exciting, and they're trying to make it shorter. And to me, I'm a traditionalist. I don't like change. And baseball's built on the back of its traditions. So this, to a certain degree, had me a little bit concerned. Now, I've seen some conversations about the idea that they're just trying to bring back old school baseball and trying to steer the game away from sabermetrical view of it. The old school guys, they don't like it too much, do they?
Mm-hmm.
And it was funny because something I saw with Theo Epstein, who famously was super successful with the Cubs and Boston before that, killing the two curses. He was brought in as an advisor, and I heard him talking about it, and he was saying that he was kind of the person that brought this to the game, and he felt some responsibility to go, because his job, his role was to make a winning baseball team, not an exciting baseball team.
Yeah.
Now, as an advisor to baseball, his job is to make baseball exciting. And his idea for that was to put it back, to fix what he had broken. So for me, the excitement of baseball is always there. I like the numbers. I like a lot of things about baseball, but I understand that other people need that immediate action, the base stealing and the hits, of course. But I like a pitcher's duel as much as the next guy. So for me, I've always enjoyed baseball. They're trying to appeal, I guess, making it a bit shorter to younger people. Baseball does need to grow in those markets. But for me, one of my main concerns was don't ruin baseball for the people that watch baseball to try and entice the people that don't watch baseball. That just seemed weird for me. But on the whole, we'll get into the rules individually. But some of them I like and some of them I don't like, which is interesting for me because I thought I'd hate them all.
Which of them do you think like high level is going to impact the game the most? Like in terms of maybe not the viewing experience, maybe in terms of like results, runs, production, all that kind of stuff. Like what do you think is actually going to impact the game the most of those?
I think the obvious one and the one that people are talking about the most is the shift. The shift has changed baseball significantly in a very short period of time. Over the last 5 years, we've seen hits in baseball come massively down, especially for left-handed hitters.
Yeah.
And so that's the obvious one. But for me, the one that's more interesting to me is the bigger bases. For two reasons. You've got a shorter distance from home to first base.
Yeah.
Those bang plays that are out now suddenly are becoming more and more than they're becoming bang safe.
Yeah. I think how many of them there are a game, like how many times that happens and how many TV reviews are there where it's so close and you think there's at least one of them a game. At least.
In the early times when I started to get into baseball, that was one of the things that everyone loves home runs and things like that. I loved that. I loved that you had this umpire making such a vital call of safe or out and how accurate they were.
It always amazed me. New to the game, I was stunned at how accurate those first base umpires are.
When you slow it down, it becomes obvious. But live to the naked eye, it's incredibly hard. And officiating is massive right now, isn't it? In the sense of in the public eye and what people are talking about. And that was always something that I thought baseball did well. I always thought the umpires did a really good job. Yeah. There are some bad seeds out there every now and then calling balls and strikes, but on the whole, they do a really good job. And to me, this is something that's going to make a big difference. Additionally, the distance between first and second is now shorter.
Yeah.
Those stolen bases are going up.
They're going up, aren't they? That's what we saw in the minor leagues. One of the things that popped was the minor league stolen base count was way up. And, teams will look at things and, will maybe take a little bit of time to feel it out. Like, is it worth the risk and and all these kind of things that go into it. But, fundamentally in minor league baseball last year, they were way up the stolen bases. And so I think we should expect that. And it's really interesting because from the Marlins specifically, they have last year's, base stealing champ. And the question will be is how much opportunity he will get this year based on playing time, etc. But, for the Marlins, the type of team that, needs to try and create offense rather than hit offense at times, that's going to be a really interesting rule change, I think, for them that they can try to benefit from, particularly if they, you've got Jazz and Arias and, Birdie, these kind of guys, speedy guys in the lineup. Like to your point, it's going to be a little bit more old school, perhaps, rather than the big boys that got to go. It's going to be the fast boys that got to run. And that's going to be creating scoring opportunities, which is going to be fun to watch. We all like stolen bases. Like, it's fun to see that happen. So, yeah, I'm with you. Mate. I do think the bases piece has been underrated, I would say, in terms of the impact thus far. Like, a lot of people talking about the shift, but it wasn't until you got your eyeballs on the bases themselves. I think as soon as we saw that, like last week, when obviously the bases were down for spring camps opening, and you had the comparison, you were like, oh, they're massive. They're massive compared to the ones prior to it. So, yeah, great shout on that, Shaun. I want to dig into a few of them in a bit more detail. But before we do that, first ad of the day, guys, and it is our good friends over at Built Bar. So if you're looking for that delicious treat but don't want all the fat and calories, then you've got to try those Builts. And what makes them so good? Well, for starters, they're covered in 100% real chocolate. 100% real chocolate. They come in all the unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut, almond. I don't know how they do it, but these bars, they taste like a candy bar whilst maintaining amazing macros. What's even better, they are 100% healthy as well. Only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. Perfect for those biceps. Now, you don't have to wait around to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering your Built Bars at Built.com. You can now get them at your local Walmart or Sam's Club too. That's right. Head to Walmart today. Get yourself over to the pharmacy section. Grab yourself a box of Builts. 4-bar box includes cookies and cream, or double chocolate, or coconut puffs. How about those puffs? And if you're close to Sam's Club, run in and grab a 13-bar box. All the hit flavors. Brownie batter, churro. Thank me later and enjoy those Builts. All right, away from Built Bars and back to rules. Shaun, let's talk about the shift specifically, because I do think, like you said, this has been the most talked about change for obvious reasons. It feels like it's gone too far. In terms of who benefits, likely it's, well, you mentioned the biggest beneficiary are likely the lefty pull guys, right? But is effectively the majority of the hitters going to benefit here now, where they're, I know not everyone shifted as hugely as others, but pretty much everyone was getting shifted on in some form, depending on where they hit in the order, what was happening in the game situation, et cetera, et cetera. But for me, offensively, this is just going to create more opportunities for more hits for these guys, right? That's the aim of this rule.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's more balls in play and more action. I mean,
balls in play. That's the one.
That's the whole idea of this. It is a case of lefties are going to get the most benefit because the lefties pull to the side that they were getting shifted to. The argument was, why don't you just slap a single up the other side?
Yeah.
But these guys, singles don't earn you any money. These guys want pulling for power. So now they've got that open hole on that side. I think you could see some massive changes. Jazz is gonna eat on this, I think. But no, on the whole, there are going to be more hits. It's going to be, and this is probably something that we haven't seen for a while. The idea that an elite defensive infielder is now going to show his worth, because rather than having 3 guys just waiting and almost having a telegraphed, you're going to hit it right here, and it always went like, unless you were the Marlins, because they always played poorly against the shift. But everyone else seemed to just put the player exactly where the ball was going to go. Now you don't have that. So these elite shortstops, they're going to have to start showing their worth. The third base guys, they're going to have more room to have to defend. Therefore, up the line is going to be harder for them to make those plays. There's going to be a lot more emphasis on defensive prowess. And unfortunately for the Marlins, they've kind of taken a step backwards in that direction.
They have. I think that's the most interesting wrinkle about this whole thing is the fact that the Marlins had built what was an above average infield. And as soon as the rule changes are taking place, they've stepped that backwards. And time will tell. Just on that topic specifically, just kind of going into the Marlins, because, well, it is the Lock the Marlins pod. That's the assumption at this point, but I guess the proof will be in the pudding with these guys once they get in. One thing that did occur, and I think it might have been on the Fish Stripes pod that I listened to the other day, that I thought was a really great point, was the fact that both Gene Segura and Luis Arias, both in the WBC, which is really going to hamper them in just kind of getting their, not just the two of them, but the infield together, just working together effectively. Two new guys into the infield that aren't going to spend a bunch of time playing together through spring, getting the reps together. So come opening day, gut feel is at least one of those two teams goes pretty far. Like, they're going to be a little bit unfamiliar with each other, and how their position is going to be unfamiliar anyway, because there's no shifts and whatever. But it's going to be, I think that is a really interesting wrinkle. Like, it's a brand new infield with new rules, and it's going to be relatively unpracticed for the Marlins generally. And so there's going to be some teething problems early on, mate, I think. And as fans, I think it's important for us to probably just understand that and accept it early rather than kind of jumping on it too hard. But I think we've got to expect a little bit of a teething issue with the infields, and as they kind of settle in, particularly with Gene Segura at third, who played 25 games at third in his whole career. So, we'll see on that one. Do you see the thought that I had? This is the interesting bit: is do you see now teams trying to counter it? And what I mean by that is, think of those lefty pull dudes. Do you just take left field out and put them where the shifted dude used to be? Do they create a shift but in a different way and move left field out and put them into the shallow right instead, to kind of create that same situation?
There will be far smarter baseballing brains than mine working on this 24/7.
Yeah.
Because there's always that next wrinkle. I think we spoke a couple of weeks back about the idea that with sabermetrics now, the harder thing to do now is to distance yourself from the group, because everybody's doing it to a degree. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, with this new rules change, you've got everyone starting from zero, and the smarter teams are going to find ways to ink out that little bit more value. So it'll be interesting. I don't think we'll see too much in spring. It's tough to say, but I think as we get more and more experience, as the teams get more and more experience with this new playing format, we'll definitely see some interesting sort of wrinkles from these teams.
Yeah, me too. It wouldn't shock me. I can certainly see that happening where, for those like extreme dudes in particular, like left field's irrelevant anyway, probably. And so you take the risk and you plonk them into shallow right instead, and you've got your shift. Hey ho. Talk to me about the pitch clock, mate, because this is, again, another really interesting one. I like the idea of it for pace of play and whatever, particularly, the regular season. I don't know if this carries through to the postseason, to be honest. So I don't know that. Do you know that if this is a postseason as well, or just regular season?
My understanding is these are all official
rules.
Genuine rules for both, yeah.
Doesn't matter. So, okay. I can understand why they're doing this, trying to kind of speed things up. Who's going to be most impacted on this? Is this going to be the starters or the relievers, do you think, that will be most impacted? I guess it could be quite specific guys. But what I mean by that is, I feel like the starters, they get used to working in a rhythm, and it's all about the rhythm. I feel like with relief pitching, they operate at their own pace, and they've got all these idiosyncrasies, and they've got all these movements and all this stuff, particularly the closers. That's the thing where I was going at. I was like, these closer guys, is this going to really impact the closers? They're going to be really thrown off and not have the ability to kind of work at their pace that they like to in what is a really high leverage spot. I'm really intrigued about that. But where's your head at with this one in terms of the impact to the guys and who it impacts most?
So what you're saying is relievers are weirdos.
I'm just saying they seem to have these roots. They are weirdos.
Pete, you're right. They are. They're proper with their goalkeepers. They're baseball goalkeepers. They're not right in there. To me, it is the relievers, because for one reason and one reason only, that 15-second period of time that you've got, it's you're pitching again and again and again and again. It's so back-to-back pitching.
Yeah.
Starters, don't get me wrong, starters are elite athletes. But relievers, what they're doing is they are pushing the boundaries on velocity of how fast you can throw a ball. We're seeing so many relievers now throwing 101 plus.
Yeah.
To have to do that repeatedly in a short period of time is something that we will have never seen. We've seen starting pitchers throw high 90s and some of them touch 100, but they're doing it at their own pace. and they're working their way up to that. Relievers are literally pushing their body to the limit, and they need, even, I know it's not that much of a difference in distance from pitching, but for me, I think we're going to see potentially more injuries with relievers. Now, you asked me, would it affect the starters or the relievers the most? I actually think it will affect the hitters the most.
Oh.
Because the pitchers always used to whinge that we don't need a pitch clock. We need a batter's clock.
Oh, okay.
Because the batters, they're hot dogging it, they're
messing with gloves.
They're adjusting their elbow pads, they're leaving the batter's box, And then when they finally deem themselves ready to hit, now you can pitch at me.
Yeah.
I think the hitters are really going to have to adjust their approach, and it will take some time, I think, for them to adjust to the idea that you swing and miss at a pitch, and you haven't got 30, 45 seconds to settle yourself and get yourself ready. It's that next pitch is coming.
Yeah.
Get back in the batter's box, and I don't care about you thinking about your last pitch. Come up and hit again.
Do you know what? The other thing, it's a really great point. And maybe the one thing to do is to go back and just watch a random game from last year and just work out how we all just get so used to it. We don't even notice how much time is taken with guys in the batter's box going away, adjusting everything, and then finally they're in the box. Then the sign comes. Then the pitcher's shaking off. You don't even realize they're going to. I do wonder how much time they're going to chop out of it. How important is the catcher going to be in this as well? Where that kind of connection with catcher and pitcher, trying to get on the same wavelength as well, right? Like trying to get the signs down, know what they're going to want to throw, so you haven't got all this kind of no. And next thing is you run out of time, and like in the NFL, like play clock coming in, no, okay, timeout, and you burn a timeout because you can't quite get the play down. So I'm intrigued to see how the catcher-pitcher relationship, how important that is, and how many mess ups there are too, where they kind of run out of time. I think it's another interesting wrinkle, right?
Absolutely. You could have a pitcher coming up for a spot start for whatever reason, coming up from AA, AAA, pitching to the backup catcher.
Yeah, they
may never have thrown together. No. All of a sudden, you've got this young kid who's up at the show for the first ever time. And we could see some real awkward moments.
We really could. This won't be an awkward moment for anyone. It's time to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel, guys. Yes, sir. And not sure I made that segue, but the midway point of the NBA season is here. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet does not win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from moneyline to point scorers and threes drained. I love that one. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Absolutely demolished that one. That was really good. Right. Run out of time, Shaun. But I think in summary, let's just kind of wrap it up, I suppose. Well, I did want to talk about the pitching idiosyncrasy piece as well that we talked about, because we weren't certain if this was going to impact Johnny Cueto. Obviously, again, this is a Marlins podcast. We saw that there's going to be a limit or stopping, really, what probably should have always been stopped on what some of these pitchers were doing kind of before they got into their motion, where there was legs going everywhere, rocking babies, doing everything, and they were just allowed to do that. That seemingly is out. Cueto is a different situation, as we talked about pre-game for this episode, where it looks like it's going to be okay for Cueto. But just try and summarize maybe the differences there, why it's okay for Cueto, why it's not maybe for some of the other guys that are rocking babies or hope to still rock babies.
So, for me, Cueto is fine. It is a case of his movement is a movement that's trying to upset the timing of the hitter. So his legs coming up, and then he's not quite pitching, and he comes back. He's just having a bit of fun. For me, some of the players, and I think it was it Cortez for the Yankees, and his movement, he was literally balking. His leg was coming up and then coming back down and back up, back down. That's a balk. Rocking the baby, the moving of the hand, that's a balk every day of the week. And these rules weren't created to stop that. The rules were always there. I think it was just a line in the sand. Stop doing that.
I think so. It's the Astros guy that I was thinking about, Luis Garcia. He was the rocking the baby dude, and yeah, it was like his legs were going crossing, they were doing a dance, his arms were shaking around. It was all just a bit too much. Where Cueto, like you said, I mean, it may help the guys that are actually watching this rather than listening, because me and Shaun are both moving our bodies and doing everything. But Cueto's leg is actually in the air. And it's like at that point, he's like kind of twisted his leg, but his leg is still up. And that's the main difference there, where Garcia is like, his legs are basically doing, an Irish jig effectively, which, isn't on. So, yeah, I think it's interesting that they've kind of limited that. I think, to be honest with you, Shaun, I know you said you're a traditionalist, mate. And if there is a traditionalist that is saying, actually, I can see where MLB is going with this, and actually I kind of maybe like some of these, then to me, that says that Major League Baseball may be onto something here. For those that have seen my Twitter feed the last week or so, I've been on holiday, I've been on the Sun Lounge, and I've been reading about the 1997 Marlins, which has been a lot of fun because it was well before my Marlins fanhood. So it's been great to try and hear about some of the stories of which they are. There's a lot of stories, a lot of epic stories in that book, no doubt. One thing that stood out to me, though, was talking about the Colorado Rockies. There is a big theme in that book about attendances. I think there's a big theme about Marlins baseball about attendances forever. Even going back to 1997, the key thing they said was in Colorado, the team may have stunk, and they stunk then and they still stink now pretty much. But their attendances were always amazing. Why was that? Well, one of the main reasons was they played fun baseball. There was a lot of action happening, and people went to be entertained because there was things happening. In some ways, I know that's a kind of tenuous link here. What I think they're going is we're trying to get some more action in the game, trying to get more fans down to come and see stuff happening rather than just ground balls to short and plays over at first. It's a bit tiresome over 162. And so I'm all for it, mate. I like the action. I'm not a traditionalist. And I'm pleased to hear that Shaun is embracing this too. I do think the game is going to look very different. I think there's going to be some teething issues with it as well, where there's going to be quite a few balls called where pitchers run out of time and batters aren't in the box at the right time. And so there'll be an adjustment period. But I think in general, more action, less overall time perhaps, or dead time, I think we're all for. And I think that is the key bit. Some of the games may go longer because there's more action, more hits, but it's about reducing the dead time in the game. I think that's important. There's only so many beer trips we can make in a 3-4 hour baseball game. We're going to wrap it up there, guys. Thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. Enjoy your pancakes if you are indeed tossing the pancakes today for Pancake Day or Shrove Tuesday. I will be back, of course, tomorrow. If you're thinking about your second listen of the day, then I strongly recommend heading over to Locked On MLB Prospects. Lindsey Crosby hosts that one. It's an absolute stud of a host on that, covering all of the prospects across all of the organizations at all times. So head over there. But again, thanks for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. And we'll be back very, very soon. Thank you to the UK GOAT, Shaun Barrett, on a rules podcast. Who would have thought it on Locked On Marlins? But nevertheless, I think we've covered it well. Excited to see how these rules play out. See you tomorrow.